get serious about building content sites and building a profitable business online? Welcome to the Niche Website Builders Podcast. We bring you the latest field-tested tips, tricks, and strategies for building a profitable online asset. We interview industry experts, share customer success stories, and reveal our own experiences working on hundreds of sites to inspire and motivate you to make something happen. Let's do this.
Welcome to the Niche Website Builders Podcast. Today we have legendary guest Kyle Roof. Now Kyle's obviously been around the SEO space for a very long time. He's a very well-respected SEO. Now, if you're not too familiar with Kyle, I guess you could say he's probably most famous for his Lorem Ipsum experiment, where he ranks a local website number one using essentially Lorem Ipsum or gibberish text, but placing the main keywords throughout the text just to show that Google is an algorithm and doesn't quite read your content like a human. And that's kind of what we dive into. I take this podcast down a way where it's geared towards trying to get clarity and answers on a lot of the typical SEO advice that is given today, whether that's on YouTube or Twitter. Some of these examples would be, what is good content? How and what is EAT? How do I improve EAT? That's not just writing a better about page. Does site speed and core web vitals really actually matter for ranking and for essentially having a better website? We touch on things like keyword cannibalization, title tag best practices, writing meta descriptions, duplicate content. Is there ways you can find out if you have duplicate content on your site, if it's even affecting your site? Things on indexing, outbound links. Yeah, we cover the whole shebang to do with essentially on-page and some off-page things to do with your website. Obviously, Kyle's done a lot of testing in the space, so he has a lot of knowledge to offer here. He also has a page optimization tool called Page Optimizer Pro. And as a Niche Website Builders listener, if you go into the description, you'll see there is a coupon code. And using the coupon code Niche Website Builders gets you 15% off Page Optimizer Pro's agency plan. And you also get 10 extra report credits using that code as well. So if you want to have a taste of, I guess, Kyle's way of doing on-page SEO and use his tool, you can get a discount. Again, down in the description, Niche Website Builders, and you can get a 15% discount. But sit back and enjoy the podcast.
This episode is brought to you by Niche Website Builders, an agency dedicated to helping people just like you build profitable content sites. Niche Website Builders are the hands-off content site marketing agency you always wished existed. It's run by content site marketers for content site marketers, and they help both investors and individuals alike build profitable online properties. They provide a fully outsourced approach to content creation, link building, and done-for-you website builds, the same approach they use on their own six-figure portfolios. For example, their content packages come with a proprietary keyword research process, are written by in-house native English speakers, formatted using templates proven to convert, and uploaded to WordPress with affiliate links added so that all you need to do is hit the publish button. Check them out at nichewebsite.builders/show. That's nichewebsite.builders/show and fill out the form to get coupon codes for 10% more content or a 10% discount on links with your first order sent right to your inbox.
All right, welcome to the Niche Website Builders Podcast. Today we have special guest Kyle Roof. Welcome, Kyle.
Oh, thanks for having me. Happy to be here.
No, thanks for coming on. I really appreciate it. Obviously, you're one of the more well-respected SEOs in the space. You've done a shit ton of testing. You've got almost legends behind you now with some of the things you've done. So maybe you want to provide a brief background of yourself for anyone who might not be familiar with you.
Sure. So I'm an SEO. I do SEO. I'm the co-founder of an agency called High Voltage SEO, and we have offices in Phoenix, Berlin, and Melbourne. We do local to national, international, and kind of everything in between. I'm the founder and co-creator of Page Optimizer Pro, which is an on-page SEO tool. And then I'm one of the co-founders of Internet Marketing Gold, which is a place where we test Google's algorithm. And we also have a lot of courses, and a lot of my courses are in that as well. It's kind of like a place to kind of learn what Google is doing, and then also kind of like what you can do with it is kind of what we kind of describe it as. And yeah, I've been doing SEO.
SEO, right? Your little,
That's
yeah.
that's our. There's definitely a big TM there on Netflix in case any of the Netflix execs are listening to this. I'm always a little concerned about that one. Well,
Fair enough. Was there anything else you wanted to add to that, or?
uh, yeah. I mean, I've been doing SEO. I actually realized, full time as like my job. Now 10 years. I went full
Oh, well.
time in 2012, doing like this is my job and this is what I'm gonna do.
Nice. So you obviously love it then, since you're still in it.
Yeah, I enjoy it. In a previous life, I was a lawyer and I was a trial attorney, and I practiced law for 4 years. And something I liked about about law was the problem solving, like kind of like how do we get from here to there. But in SEO, I really like there's a lot more to it because like every time you come into a new site or you're building a new site or it's a client site or something like that, there's always new problems to solve because they all have different goals or different ends, and they're selling something slightly different or there's some other purpose to the site. And so it's a lot of fun to come in and try to solve these problems, kind of go from an A to a B. And that's where I think SEO is just absolutely great because it's so varied and there's a lot to it. And it's very stimulating. And to be honest, but it's just been a lot of fun. I enjoy doing this work. I like talking about it. Like I like all parts of it.
Awesome. Yeah, you've done a lot of SEO testing as well, and we're going to dive into that. But I wanted to take this podcast down the road of almost beginner, intermediate, I guess, niche website builders, SEOs. I guess everyone kind of encompasses everything nowadays when they're building their own sites. And obviously, I've only been in the space for a couple of years. And I guess if you frequent Twitter, YouTube, whatever it is, and you're following whoever, you're going to hear a lot of different opinions on the ways to do things. You'll be
Sure.
told, just write good content, everything else take care of itself. Don't buy backlinks, do buy backlinks. Backlinks are good, backlinks are bad. Have eat on your site, okay? But I wanted to dive in on a granular level with you from a personal selfish standpoint for my own learning, but I guess for everyone else too as well who will learn from it. And I want to
Sure.
dive into some of these things and basically get a clear answer on, I guess, defining a lot of these things. And the first one is that I really want to ask you is, what is good content?
Sure. Well, so it's important to understand that Google can't read at all. Like Google is one of the most powerful things that we've ever seen in our entire lives, and maybe the most powerful thing we'll ever see. And it's beautiful and it's amazing, and it honestly makes us a decent amount of money. Like I don't know that our jobs would exist but for Google, but Google doesn't read. It isn't a human being that's looking at a page that's reading as you and I would read. And Google is an algorithm. And so an algorithm is going to read in math, and you need to give the algorithm the math that it wants. So when it comes to rank and your content, writing good content doesn't matter because Google math isn't doing any kind of value judgment. It's not saying, this is better content than that. Like in terms of like Google's never said like, oh, I read this and now my life is enriched and I'm a better bot because of reading this. Like that's never an experience that Google is going to have. So it isn't the good content that Google's looking for. It's looking for the content that satisfies the algorithm. And that's the rank aspect. The thing you can't discount though is that obviously once you rank and people are coming to your site, you want them to do something. You want them to convert in some way. You want them to do some action. And that's where obviously good content will come in. You can write content that can rank, but it won't convert. So those are two concepts that are slightly different. The idea of like this content can rank, this content can convert. Now, where an SEO comes in, or somebody that's building a site, is those aren't mutually exclusive concepts. You can actually write content that ranks well, but also converts. It just takes a little more time, usually more than anything. It takes a little more creativity. It takes a little more investment. But usually people just want whatever's the fastest thing that they can do in terms of content. That's what they're going to put out or something like that. And that's where most people kind of fall off the rails a bit when it comes to anything. But the idea is that content needs to satisfy the algorithm for ranking purposes, and then the good content or what kind of people talk about, that's what will convert. That'll get people to do the action that you want them to do, and you can have content that does both of those very well.
Actually, I think your Lorem Ipsum example was a good example of that, basically ranking based on an algorithm, correct? And I want to take that a bit and be like, okay, So maybe we can dive a little bit into that as well, just so people who aren't familiar with it
Sure.
understand. But before we go into that as well, or to add on to that after that story, does that mean then it comes down to exact match keywords that you're trying to rank with in the articles? Obviously, there's a lot of discussion now, like, hey, Google's is smart enough. They don't need exact match keywords. You don't need to write best dog water bowl for this and that throughout your page. You can use essentially related keywords or things that are just related to the topic, but Google will understand what you're writing. So maybe if you want to dive into, maybe start with that Lorem Ipsum story to give some background to it, and then cover that part.
Sure. So the Lorem Ipsum story is that there was a SEO competition, and it was in SEO Signals Lab, which is a group in Facebook. And I think at the time there were like 27,000 something, 30,000 people in the group, but they did an open competition. And the open competition was to rank for a particular term. And the term was rhinoplasty Plano. Rhinoplasty is a nose job, and Plano is just outside of Dallas, Texas. And the requirements were you had to use a brand new domain, so you couldn't have a site that you've done anything to, and you had 30 days, so it was a real sprint. And then after that, you could do whatever you wanted to do to it. And then after 30 days, the site that ranked the best won, was the idea. And I think 27 professionals entered, and myself and my team, we entered. And at the end of the 30 days, we took fifth. Only 7 sites were ranking or doing anything after 30 days, which is pretty impressive when you think about like 27 people that claim to know what they're doing, right? Like they feel good enough to enter a public competition and be like, okay, I'm going to put myself out there. Only 7 ranked for anything. And again, that's a real sprint. And we took fifth, and we were on page 9, and the winner was on page 8 at that time when the competition ended. But about 2 weeks later, the site went to the first page of Google. We're in the 7th spot. And about 2 weeks after that, and again, without doing anything else, we just did what we were doing and it was just holding. Then after that, we went to number 1 in Google, and then we went to number 1 in the maps. And then we actually wiped out the maps, and we became the knowledge panel. So for a little bit, we were rhinoplasty Plano. Like we had the knowledge panel for it. And people really lost their minds when we were doing it. And the reason that they lost their minds is because we did the entire site in Lorem Ipsum. Lorem Ipsum is fake Latin text. It's the dummy text you put in, like when you're building a website, to see what text will look like in different places. And
basically
that's what
gibberish for anyone listening.
That's right, gibberish. But we did the math. So we did the math on how many times we need our exact keyword in certain places, how many times we need its variation in certain places, how many times we need contextual terms in certain places. And then we had the Lorem Ipsum on the page, and then we very crassly copied and pasted those terms into the different areas on the page as they were needed according to the math that we worked out. And we did that to show that Google isn't reading. It's not reading. It doesn't care about the other words on the page. It's looking for specific terms, very specific important terms, a certain number of times in a certain number of places. And if you give that to Google, you will do quite well. We were told that we did this to make fun of Google. And in fact, an article was written in one of the major publications in SEO about this. They didn't contact me for a quote or anything at all, but they just decided to write an article about this. And it was like Google ranks site written in Latin. And they said that I did this to make fun of Google. And that couldn't be farther from the truth. I did it to make fun of SEOs that tell you that you only need to write good content. And I was like, you don't. Like that's not what ranking is about. You do need to write good content because you want people to convert, for sure.
Yeah.
But you don't. It's not, good content isn't going to rank in and of itself, in and of the idea that this is good content. Because again, Google is not making any kind of value judgment. It's not saying like, oh, this. Google isn't reading it all and be like, oh, all right, this is better than that. Like that's not what Google is doing. It's looking at the terms that you're using in specific places and how they factor in, and that's what the ranking factor is. Mm. So you had a question. It was about if
kind of topics versus like the exact match keywords. Obviously, you mentioned you place related keywords throughout the text. How granular are you going in terms of placing these keywords? Like, for example, you have maybe your headers and then maybe body, but the body of text is the whole article. So it sounds like you're actually placing it in specific places within the body as well.
Sure. Well, you think about the zones that Google's going to look at for rank are your H tags, like your H1, H2, H3, H4. They're going to be paragraph text. That's your P tags. That's what you kind of think of as your body. of the text. They're going to be anchor tags, things like that, even bold and italic, which are not huge factors. I mean, these things are not created equal. There are different levels to them, but they all kind of factor in. But I think what more your question might be is like, how granular do I need to go with a particular keyword? And
Yeah.
I think something that's important to understand is that you have a concept of a primary keyword, like the main concept of a page. And if you properly optimize for that primary, you will win secondary keywords. Those are like
Mm.
very, very close synonyms or very, very close concepts to that main keyword. So when you're writing a page, you don't have to have 50 pages going for each little slight iteration of a particular keyword. You would optimize, you do the math, if you will, for that primary, and then you're going to win the very close variations of that keyword. You're going to win the very close secondary terms to that keyword. And there are places you can look for these. Like if you were to, let's say your primary keyword, you search for it and you scroll to the bottom and you see those related searches, you can likely win those terms by properly optimizing for that top level term. And then the ones that are most
Okay.
important to you, you probably want to get them on the page and say an H2 because that's a very important signal area. But you don't have to optimize for all those separate related terms. You can probably win them all on one page by properly optimizing for that primary phrase or that primary
So
term.
so you mean by properly optimizing for that primary term, as in you're adding that exact match primary term whatever amount of times, but you're saying you don't need to add those related keywords in that you want to rank for because you're going to rank for them anyway by ranking for that main term?
Yeah, not necessarily. If one is like really important to you, you see like, oh, this one, like, yeah, we definitely want that. I would use that as an H2 because it's only going to support, as another
Yeah.
section on the page because it's only going to support your target keyword. But when you look at your search console on some of your more successful pages, what you'll find is that you're ranking for hundreds or thousands of keywords. And a lot of people
Mm.
miss this concept. They have their rank tracker for maybe 20, 30 terms or something like that, like their main terms. But when you look at
Yeah.
actually how a page is performing, you find that a page is ranking for hundreds of keywords and a bunch are
Yeah.
actually not on the page. They're not there at all. And that's because Google said, okay, this term is related to that. So Google will start to rank you for those terms, even though they don't exist on the page. So you need to make sure that you're monitoring how that page is performing, not how individual keywords are performing. You want to see like page level performance so you can, because sometimes people get really myopic and they're like, oh, I optimized for this keyword, but I'm not even in the top 100. But when you look at actually how the page is performing, it's ranking for hundreds of terms that are all around it, like really good terms that you want. And it's actually generating decent traffic and impressions and all that. But if you're just kind of like buried into like a specific keyword, you're going to miss actually how the page is doing. And that's also kind of how SEO works together with the idea of like, I'm going to optimize for this, but I'm going to win all of these things, which also gets into like, if you're building a site from scratch, you get the question all the time, like, should I go after like a super hard keyword? Sure. I mean, you may never win it. Like you could be going up against, huge, huge, and huge for your niche. That doesn't matter. But you still want to have that page and you still want to optimize for that term because you can win all those other terms that they're really not going after. Where you could have like those related or secondary terms on the page and have a very successful page about a particular concept and you never win the target term, but it's a really good page and it still brings in a lot of ROI and really does well for you because of all those secondary terms.
Gotcha. Gotcha. All right. I've got a bunch of other questions. Well, I'm going to stick with more on-page stuff in the beginning.
Okay.
But in terms of best practices for, I guess, meta descriptions, H1 and title tags. So obviously,
Okay.
if you're lazy like myself, I don't bother filling in meta descriptions and stuff. But when you,
Okay.
I guess even if you listen to some SEO podcast, whatever else, having the meta description can help you rank for certain terms. It stops Google just picking something random out of your article and using that when you could optimize it to try and rank higher. So I guess, is there a best practice regarding doing meta descriptions or not? And then regarding H1 and title tags, should they be the same, different? What are you trying to do there?
Okay, so those are separate concepts. The first one on meta description, you probably want to write one on the pages that are most important to you. Like if you're looking at like, do you need one for your About Us page? Probably not. Or the privacy policy page? Probably not. But on the page that could bring you decent traffic and decent ROI, I would write the meta description I want. Now, Google is completely free to ignore it, which is very annoying because they do that sometimes. You'll have a very perfectly crafted meta description. And the meta description isn't necessarily going to help you rank, but it will help you attract a click. You're telling somebody this is the reason they should go to this page, and so you probably want to write something that is clicky enough, right? The idea is like this solves the problem that you have on this page. Please come here and do that, or come and look at this. So you want to write something that is that, but Google can ignore it if they want. If you're in a situation where Google is ignoring your meta description, something that you can do is write a small like introductory paragraph that tells people why they should read what is below, and you can use that as your meta description. And if your meta description is on the page, you have a much better chance of that being used by Google. Is something that kind of happens. So I would do. Oh, please.
I was going to say, are there certain, I guess, do you always have to like stuff it with keywords as such? Because obviously you see Google highlight or bold the keyword that you search, right? And there was meta description. You can say, okay, the top one maybe has like it mentioned twice or variations of it twice. Do you need to also then do the same?
Yeah, I mean, you don't have to stuff it, but if the page is about that concept, it should be pretty easy to get it in.
Yeah. Okay.
Sometimes I feel like I can't get this target keyword into the meta description as I describe the page. I'm like, then maybe that doesn't exist. It shouldn't exist. That's not the page, right? If you can't, or like, I can't get a keyword into the image alt, that describes a perfect an image that's on the page. Then why is that image there? Like, if you can't describe the image and it can't even have a variation of your target term, then that's not the right image, right? Like it really shouldn't be that tricky. In my opinion, it should be that hard to get your term or a very close variation of your term in there in a way that encourages the click. Like I feel like that should be not too tricky to do. Again, thinking of that, the primary concept or the primary keyword of the page is what you're shooting for.
Cool.
And I think your other question though was about like say the page title and then the H1. So like the page title that search engines see and then the title that humans see. I can tell you from testing over and over again, you want them as close as possible. You want them to be almost identical. You want you want the title that you give to search engines or to Google to be the same title, the H1 that you're giving to humans. And if you think about it, it only makes sense. Why would you give a different title to two different things? Like why would that be a good experience for anyone? Because the page title that shows up in the SERPs, that's usually the one that you're giving to Google. That's the title tag, and that's what's going to be there. And then when they click on that, if they were to see a different title, wouldn't that be a bad experience? Somebody's like, okay, I see this title. This is the information I'm looking for. This one, and I click on it, and the very first thing that they see is the title on the page, and it's a different title. I think that would throw people. Like, why would they want that experience? They've already said, yes, this is what I want. Why would you give them something different? Give them the same title. And I think the reason that Google favors that in the test that we run is that because of that. You don't want to give people such a bad experience where like they got tricked into clicking on something in the SERPs and they go to the actual page and they don't see what's there. That's a bad experience. So you want them to be as close to each other as possible. The only difference where it often comes in is usually in your title tag, there's like a pipe and then like a brand name, right? Or like a dash in the brand name or something like that. So obviously you wouldn't put that into your H1, but otherwise the rest should be basically the same title.
Gotcha. So then do you have any best practices for writing titles? So I had Stephen Hockman on, I think it was the week before this one. And we talked about some on-page stuff with titles. And one of the things he recommends is having your primary keyword at the beginning of the title. And that's what I've been doing for a while now. But obviously there's a trade-off. There can be a trade-off between having the main keyword at the beginning of the title versus having a catchy title to try bring the click, essentially. So how do you balance that? Do you have any best practices for writing those?
I don't know if you necessarily must have the keyword like all the way to the top. I've seen a lot of different things on that, but that's easy to do. So you do your keyword, right? Best whatever you're doing, colon, very catchy. Best, do your keyword, dash, very catchy, pipe, very catchy. The sites that do it the best are the ones that do it that way. So they get that keyword that they want, that thing they want, and the most important place to put a keyword is in the title tag. That's number one.
Yeah.
The next most important place is in the H1. So these you need to get it in there somehow, right? Just have to. But you can always put it first and then do a colon and then do the very descriptive clicky thing that people want. So that's when you look at the top level sites that are doing these types of things, that's how they all do it. They do the keyword and a colon or a dash or a pipe, like right there. And they still might have that pipe at the end with the brand name kind of on the back end. But they're always putting the keyword and then something descriptive why you should click on this thing. So that's probably how I'd approach it in those types of situations. Put the keyword, put a colon, be descriptive on why people should click, and then do it that way.
Great. Good to know I'm doing something correct then.
You're nailing
Yeah. I've got a bunch more that kind of blend from on page to off page as well, but I'm just gonna run through these. 'Cause I've got some, I think, interesting ones that people will like too. So duplicate content. So I guess people avoid it because you want your content to be original. You don't want Google to essentially almost like penalize you. But obviously, we see a lot of scraping sites, whatever else, ranking with duplicate content in the SERPs as well. So I wanted to get your take on, I guess, duplicate content between websites, but then also duplicate content within your own website. For example, obviously taking one post maybe on whatever it is, and maybe you're writing it for a different brand, but essentially having this exact same word for word information, minus maybe swapping some terms out. So maybe, yeah, between websites and then between your own website.
Sure. So the duplicate content actually only exists on one website. So like it's not, I think, precise to use there's duplicate content across other sites. That's called plagiarism. And that's a whole other thing. But duplicate content kind of exists on your own site, and there are a lot of very good reasons to do it. Like you might be running ads to pages that are on your site, and they're going to be quite similar. If you ever have really pages that are basically the same thing and you have them up for whatever legitimate reason, you can use rel canonical to point back to the one that you want to show in the SERPs. And that's the way you kind of get past any issues where Google does not have any heartburn. If you have, let's say, 3 pages and they're all exactly the same and you're using them for different purposes, like one's kind of where you're directing social media traffic, one's where you're directing ad traffic for whatever reason, one's the one you want to rank, you can then use rel canonical to point to the one that you want to show up in SERPs. And rel canonical will take care of any issues on duplicate content. And the same thing if maybe you have a site that is translating pages. You've got the English version and the French version and the Spanish version, something like that. You can use hreflang, and hreflang can say this is the version in this language, and again, you won't have any duplicate content issues. So that kind of takes care of those types of things. The other thing to understand, though, is that some people think like, oh, I have duplicate content issues on their site, but I don't think they've ever looked at any of their data. Like they're just like, it must be duplicate content, and it could be, but you can always check. So take a chunk of page that you think is duplicate, like take two sentences, right? Put those into the SERPs and search for it, and your pages should come up, right? The idea is that you've gotten a large chunk of terms or words from your page. You put them into the SERPs. You can see if you're being filtered. You can see if Google is seeing it as duplicate because you'll see the little blue thing at the bottom that says we've excluded these pages because they're duplicate. That's the way you know that you've got some sort of duplicate content issue on your site. So you should check that. Most people don't have it. Most people, they're not ranking because their sites are terrible. They're like, oh, it must be this duplicate content thing, or they make up like I've got cannibalization issues. Like, I don't know, maybe you do, or hear me out, your site could be terrible. That could be the actual issue. So you want to check to see if you're actually having duplicate content issues, and that's how you can see it. Google will show you because it will filter the sites out, and you can see it on that little blue line that says we didn't show the 5 results because they're duplicate. So you want to check to make sure that that's an actual problem. So that's on your own site. And then your other issue is like sites that are maybe stealing your stuff.
Yeah. I'm sure a lot of people have that issue. You see it on Twitter all the time.
Of course. Yeah, that's the worst. And there aren't any super great answers, unfortunately. Like I wish I had like, here's the one thing you need to do and you're going to ruin all of them. And unfortunately, that doesn't exist. You can do DCMA takedowns. And you can also petition Google and say that this is somebody's taking my stuff, and Google will de-index those sites. It's not the best process. It's not the easiest process. It's not the most satisfactory, like internally process, but those are the things you can do when you do have issues with somebody stealing your stuff. But it is not great, and it is rampant. And it really sucks when you've taken the time to build something out and some Yahoo comes along and snags it. That's definitely not fun. But you can tell Google this is mine. You can hit their hosting up too. You can say like, hey, these guys have stolen my stuff. You can try to get their hosting to take them down. It becomes a little more tricky if they have like hosting from Russia or India. Those places they don't care. Their Polish hosting company is not going to honor that DCMA takedown. But Google might take them out of the index. You can get that.
Gotcha. Perfect. We actually had a couple of good segues now. I wanted to touch on keyword cannibalization.
Okay.
So I guess, firstly, how do you know that your keywords are being cannibalized within the SERPs? Obviously, maybe if you're tracking things in a range tracker, you might see some movement, but how do you definitively know? And then what should you do if you do find that?
Okay. So again, this is one of the things where people are like, I've got cannibalization issues. And it's like, really? How do you know? Like,
Yeah.
what have you done? And then most of them are just like, I just thought it. It went into my brain and and it came out of my mouth. Like that's usually where most people are at. But you can see it in the SERPs, or in Search Console. So the primary term for that page that you think is struggling because of cannibalization, right? So put that into your Search Console, and Search Console will pull up the pages that are ranking for that term. Right. So whatever your primary term is, you can see the pages, and it is very normal, very natural for multiple pages to rank for one main term. That's not a problem. But what you'll see is, like, let's say the page they've actually optimized and done something for, it's showing up. It'll show you what percentage of time it's appearing for that particular term. And let's say it's showing for 80% of the time. That's great. That's normal. That's good. And then you've got two other pages, one showing 10, and one showing the other showing 10, something like that. That's totally normal and fine. Where you know you have a cannibalization problem is when you look at that and there are two pages they're showing, and each are 50-50. That means that they're popping into the SERPs one after the other. That is a cannibalization issue because they're fighting each other. That's what that means. They're both eating the term. And they're fighting each other, like one showing and then the other showing, then one showing and then the other showing, and that's a cannibalization issue. And so that's a problem. And that's when you know you have an issue. And what you would want to do in that situation is you'd want to then detune the page you don't want showing, because obviously there are enough factors there, at least enough on-page factors for sure, where Google thinks like, oh, this term, this is the right page. So you would want to start detuning that page. But you want to see kind of close to that 50-50 in Search Console on which page is showing for that particular term within the SERPs. So like if you have like one that's like 70-80% and then you've got a few other stragglers, that's fine, that's normal. It's when you get close to that 50-50 when it's showing for a term, that's when you know you have problems.
Is that relatively rare then? And with, I guess, is it a relatively new feature in Google where you can where they'll rank a page and then they'll almost have an indented page of a similar topic for that same site? So I don't know if I guess it's almost like cannibalization.
They do that within the SERPs. They do that within the SERPs where they're going to show us two different pages and they indent it. That's a SERP feature, and that's not a problem at all. You're taking up more space. That's not cannibalization. That's the win. Like now you're taking up two spots in the SERPs, and that's perfect because now that's one less competitor that's showing up. So if you have that, take that. You should be very happy. That's actually a great point, because you might actually look in Search Console and say, like, maybe I've got a problem, but really it's actually both sites or both pages are showing within the SERPs. That's another thing that you can't just like blindly follow somebody like, oh, I see this and it's a problem. Like, look at the SERPs, see what's going on there, because to your point, you actually might have done something really good.
Gotcha. Perfect. And I also want to touch on EAT. That's always bandied around now is if your site has good EAT, then you're going to be good. You're going to be safe from Google updates. You're going to rank for term search and authority now, etc., etc. But EAT is often, I guess, described as having a good about page. And that's pretty much really as far as it's taken, at least from what I've seen online, is, okay, have a good about page. Now you've got good EAT because you've explained who you are and what you do. But obviously there's more to it than that. So do you want to maybe run through maybe what EAT actually is, and maybe how, if someone was listening to this now, how they could go and start improving their EAT?
Sure. So EAT stands for expertise, authoritativeness, trustworthiness. And those aren't the easiest words to come out of your mouth on a podcast, and I'm very happy that I could get them out without slurring them or stumbling over them, right? But a lot of people, I think they get stuck on the idea of expertise. That you need somebody that is an expert writing your content, and that isn't the case at all. Because again, going back to, remember we talked about that Google doesn't do value judgments. Let's say you went to MIT, and let's say I went to Stanford, and we both write an article on a particular topic. Who's better?
Yeah.
Or let's say there's one other person that they didn't go to either of those schools, but they've been in the industry for 30 years. Who's better? Google is not making any kind of value judgment, because who knows? Like that's not the point of it. So like when it comes to like what's an expert, it doesn't mean a doctor wrote this or somebody that has this level of experience wrote this. But what these things are looking for is really what I think what Google's looking at is like, can I trust this website to put it into the SERPs? And I think the next kind of step of this is like, who is responsible for this content? Like, okay, let's say you say everybody needs to eat gravel, right? And that's the thing that's going to make their lives better.
That's the new fitness
You know,
trend.
who exactly who's responsible when people eat gravel and it doesn't go that well? You know, and can Google identify that somebody's responsible for somebody saying that on this site? So the sites that do well in Eat updates are very upfront about who owns this site or how you can get in contact with somebody if something goes wrong, or how you can get your money back if the product doesn't work, or let's say it arrived damaged or something like that. So the things you want to think about with an Eat are how can I show that I'm a real thing? You know, Google can't walk to your business and be like, oh, hey, yeah, you're real. Shake your hand and move on and go to the next one. They have to look at your website alone, and it's a bot looking at your website, not a human looking at the pretty pictures that might be there. It's a bot going through the site saying like, what are the things that I can tick off to say like, this is a real website. There are real people behind this. And if somebody has a problem, they can get in contact with somebody. And then heaven forbid the worst happens, they could actually sue them, or they could actually get some sort of redress from them if something horrible goes wrong. So then when you think about that, then you for Eat, then you want to think about what can I put on my site that makes me look more real? You know, that would be a local phone number, a local address, an email address, multiple email addresses, not just like admin at, but like, hey, you know, if you're media and you want to do ads, that's PR at. You know, if you need returns, that's returns at. You know, those kind of things. Not just like some random generic contact form on one page that's doing that. And then keep in mind that search engines like schema. Schema are tags that go inside your website that explain what things are. So organizational schema that identifies, are you a local business? Are you a corporation? Are you a nonprofit? You know, those types of things. Are you in a specific industry? Are you a lawyer? Are you a plumber? Are you a dentist? Like, you know, and clearly identify what the things are. And then who is writing this? Not are they an expert, but is there a person writing this? So you have author pages that identify this as an author. This is their LinkedIn. You know, this is maybe things they've written before. These are the things on our site that they've written. And so you can, those are all little things you can take. And it's not just one thing. It's never just like one thing with an E, like I did this one thing and now I'm fine. It's probably a checkbox of 200 things.
Yeah.
You need to tick enough of those boxes to prove to Google, to a bot that's coming to your site, that you are trustworthy, that you're a real entity, you're a real thing, and if somebody has a problem, whatever that problem might be, that they can contact you and get help. And so a lot of affiliate sites struggle with this because they're like, well, you know, I work from home, I don't want to put my address out,
Yeah.
right? You know, or I don't give any customer service.
Yeah.
You know, and so like you have to ask yourself, like, if you're not giving any customer service, why would Google want to rank your site? You know, so like these are things you have to kind of come to terms with if you're doing certain things, especially in the affiliate space. You know, you should probably have a real business. A lot of people don't have a real business.
Yeah.
You know, they just like started doing something. It's like, well, you know, it's good to have a real business because, you know, you're probably violating the law by not doing that. So why should Google put you into the SERPs? So get a real business, get an address that's a business address. It doesn't have to be your home address. Register a business address. That's how businesses work. You know, have multiple multiple ways for people to contact you if there is a problem. Have terms and services that address those types of things. And then the more that you can do that makes you real, I think the better you'll do in any kind of Eat update.
Is there a way where if someone wanted to remain anonymous, I guess create like a pen name and still build that authorship or authority,
Sure.
expertise, and trust through their
I
website?
mean, Mark Twain was not his real name. Like, you know, you can have an assumed name in Matt Diggity. That is not his real name. You know, if you know like that's not his real name. But that doesn't matter. It doesn't have to be a real name, but it has to be the idea that you're establishing this as a real person. And especially when it comes to an address, every business can get a business address. You know, I have multiple businesses. None of them are my personal address, and we don't really have any physical locations that people are going to. But we still have a responsible business address with a registered agent that's going to like accept service. Like if something were to come, right? You can do that. It costs like, you know, $50 to $100 a month, which, you know, for if you're just starting out is not the easiest expense to assume. And I think that's why most people don't do it. Because like, oh, I just want to put this website up. I've got $10 hosting. I'm doing these things, to add in like $50 to $100 is not cheap. And I understand that, but you also have to understand that Google needs to know how people can contact you, or what they should do. And if you're not putting an address on your site, I think that is harming you. Is that the be all to end all? Absolutely not. Are there sites that are doing well without that? Of course, because we're not talking about just like one specific thing, but you have to do as much as you can within that kind of maybe very large list of like, is this a real site? As much as you can do, and the more boxes you can check, the better you can do, and also the safer you will be.
Gotcha. And I guess the big health sites and things they have fact checked or reviewed by MD blah blah blah. That's the automation. That then is another way to show EAT on your site because you have a professional essentially associated with the page.
Sure. Yeah. But I mean, you could honestly be like fact checked by my mom or whatever. I mean, and I think it'd be totally fine, because your mom's going to have a bio page on the site, and you're like, my mom is very credible when it comes to like, it doesn't matter like who the actual person is, but it's just like, that's another thing that somebody has looked at this and that it seems like they actually might be a real person. Not they have any specific credentials, but just there is a human that's involved in this process is the big
because I was thinking you could easily just write PhD or MD at the end of someone's name, and then how would you really check it?
You wouldn't. Like I said, like this is 5 out of 6 people say that this is the greatest thing. Well, who are they? Well, my mom, my dad, my grandparents. Who's this? That's not the point of it, but it's like it's the idea that you can maybe attach some personal traits to this particular person that the bot might be able to see. Like this could potentially be an actual human that's done these things.
Okay, gotcha. All right, I got some more, I guess, on-page, off-page stuff as well. A lot of these I get from listening to a bunch of different podcasts, like SEO Fight Club is one I always listen to, even though I don't understand half the things on there. But there's always good information. It's good that I get to ask you some of these things too. So one of them is Core Web Vitals and site speed. So obviously when Google dropped that bomb, everyone kind of shat their pants and cleaned out all the plugins and changed all their themes and everything like that. How much of a ranking factor is site speed and I guess specifically Core Web Vitals? And do you need to worry about it if you get to say a certain threshold or whatever it is?
Anecdotally, I don't know anyone that took their site into some amazing levels of Core Web Vitals and did better. I know many sites that have amazing Core Web Vital scores when they did before, and their sites tanked. Completely tanked. So I don't think Core Web Vital, like, obviously the site needs to load in some reasonable amount of time, right? It has to come up. Like that must be. And I think you could probably look at your own site and like as you click and you're waiting for the page to open, you'd be like, yeah, that's too long. Like I'm annoyed, right? Like I think that's where I would look at it. Like if I get pissed off waiting for my own website to open, okay, I need to fix that. But if I don't, I'm not going to worry. Like if it's opening in a reasonable amount of time, like and just do a gut check. Like ask your buddy, like, hey, can you open this? Are you annoyed or did that work? And he's like, that's fine. And then you're good. And I think that's all you ever need to worry about right now with Core Web Vitals or site speed or anything like that. Is it opening in a reasonable amount of time? And if it is, then I think you're totally fine.
Perfect. I think you just destroyed a lot of site speed agencies' business right now. So
I didn't mean to. I didn't. Actually, a really good friend of mine does Core Web Vitals. If talk to Neil Goldengay if you want some work because he does really good work. I do.
threw him under the bus in the beginning, but brought it back.
Sorry, Neil. Yeah, talk to Neil.
Yeah. All right. So another one is outbound links on a page. So personally, from my standpoint, I don't link to any other websites in my niche because I don't want to give.
I was going to say that's good. Tell me what you would do, and then I'll just back you up so your audience is like, oh, this guy knows what
Yeah, I don't link to any other pages in my niche. I guess one because most of the content is dog shit. Like I'm in like this health fitness space as well, and like men's health stuff. They write such shit content, so I don't link to any of them. I only link to because a lot of my pages are like almost like literature reviews. So I review a lot of the research and put it in. So I link out to that stuff. But for maybe people who are writing more, maybe they're writing more general content on, I don't know, let's just say like kitchen things, pet, whatever. That maybe doesn't need to have any research behind it. Is it important to to link out to other pages to almost like show Google, hey, I'm part of this network of good sites and I'm an authority. I'm sourcing authority things.
No, not at all. Don't even worry about it.
So
Only link out if it makes sense. Like if it makes sense for your readers, like maybe it's a place you want them to go because you're backing up a particular claim, then that makes sense. Otherwise, I wouldn't do it.
Gotcha. Okay.
I don't think
That
there's
was
any
easy.
point to it. Easy peasy.
Easy. That was my thinking as well.
Now the bigger question is like, was I telling the truth or did I just back up what you were saying?
Either way, I'm happy.
Either way, it works.
Yeah, perfect. So then I want to touch on then, I guess, internal linking as well. Obviously, we see contextual internal linking. I think obviously Charles Float's gone on a bit of a rampage on Twitter talking about internal linking recently with their latest update. So I wanted to also get your take on internal linking as well. So internal linking contextual. Shout out to Charles there. Then he hopefully listens to this. Since you got within context, so for I guess everyone listening within the paragraph anchor text in there, or you see a lot of sites that also do related, like within the text of related, and then the title of the post, I guess linked. Is there a best practice that you like to use there? Is there a best practice regarding anchor text that you like to use? Anything else that you've maybe tested in that space?
So I like to be very intentional with these links, and I think it's the same thing we talked about with, like, say, linking externally. There's no point in doing it just to do it. So like there's no point in having some related, like check out this thing as like a related post or something like that if there's no point in doing it. So don't do it for the sake of doing it would be my main advice. Like do it for an actual reason. And what I like to do is I like to think about my content in terms of what is the purpose of this page? What is this page trying to accomplish? Is this a money page that I'm going to try to make a lot of money with and this is going to like rank for the terms that I want? Is this more of a supporting page? Is this page kind of covering the topic? And it's the kind of thing that I can rank for, maybe a longer tail term to bring somebody in to my site. But ultimately, I want them to convert on that money page. So I try to think about what is this content trying to accomplish? And then I think about how I'm going to link. So if it's like that money page where I'm going to do like my on-page tools to it, I'm probably going to do some sort of PR for it and all that. So that's something, and I really want to limit my links out because I want to keep all my juice in that particular spot. But then let's say this is more of a supporting thing, the idea of I'm trying to get some kind of tangential traffic for a term or a question that people have about this particular topic, but it relates to it. So then in that case, what I'm going to do is I'm going to link to my target page to that from that supporting page, and I'm going to link to other supporting pages that are very tightly connected in concept. And those are the only links that I'm going to have internally. So I'm gonna link to things that are very well connected to each other in terms of supporting pages, and then link up to my target page. And after that, I don't have a lot of other links going on my site, because I really want to keep my juice funneled into a little silo or a virtual silo for a particular topic. And a virtual silo, what that means is that it's not based on the URL for each page; it's based on links that are inside the body content. And so I'm going to try to link to other supporting pages that I've intentionally built to support that target page. They're going to link to each other, and they're all going to link up to my target page. And that's how I try to structure my internal linking. I try to be very conscious of the links that I'm building and how I'm doing that within the site.
That's a great segue, actually. I wanted to ask you about some site structure stuff. And obviously, the virtual silos and how people internally link, I guess, differs across how many people do it. So I wanted to ask you, you obviously sound like you're very strict in terms of how you internally link within your silos or categories. Would you ever then link outside if it's relevant within the text, or use like, okay, this is the category within, I guess, my site, I'm only linking within that?
Again, it's the purpose of the content. Like if you're like, this could link to like 5 different things on my site, that's great. You should have that content and you should do that. But that's a separate piece of content, right? And it's living for that purpose to link to all those things. And it might be a link magnet where you can kind of then get links into it and then it spreads out. Have that piece. I just wouldn't consider that part of like my little silo, my little cluster. That's a piece of content that has other purpose. So if somebody can link to multiple things and you feel like it should, that's completely fine. But that's a separate piece of content. Then the other content is like, well, this is built just for this one thing to support that page. Then it should only have very limited links. that are going
Okay.
into it. So you want to think about, what is the purpose of this content? What am I trying to do with it? What do I hope to accomplish with it? And then that really can kind of guide you in terms of like, okay, this only has 3 links total. It's linking to that supporting content, it's linking to that supporting content, and it's linking up to the target page. And that is it. Or it's like, oh, this is really great and fun, and people are going to share it, and it could go out, and I can build links to it, and I can do a whole PR campaign, and you link up to 5 different things supporting or target pages. That's great. That's what it lives for, and it just kind of sits in a different spot on your site, and it lives for that particular purpose.
Gotcha. I wanted to jump into as well into indexing in Google. And I think from what I've at least listened, you can correct me if I'm way off on this, but Google indexes mobile first. Is that correct? Is that
Yeah, so they say the mobile first
so
index,
okay?
which they
So you
switched
say
over a couple of years ago.
you say so they say so. It might be a little different. Maybe you can dive into that. But if Google indexes mobile first, does that mean when I create my website, I should, and I say I get majority mobile traffic, should I just focus mainly on making everything perfect for mobile, and then for whatever desktop is okay, that's okay? Or is there still, room to be like, okay, desktop still needs to, I don't know, perform really well, look really good, all that kind of stuff?
The thing you need to be mindful of is, most people, when they build their web pages, they do it on a desktop browser,
Yeah.
and they build it in that. You need to make sure that the mobile version is the same.
Okay.
That when you look at the mobile version, that you're not losing H tags, you're not losing P tags, you're not losing images or some other thing that you can see on that. Because sometimes some mobile versions condense, or they remove, or they change things. But the idea is that if Google is using the mobile version of your site, even though you perfectly optimize this page in desktop, if the mobile version is different, none of that optimization matters. So you want to make sure that the mobile version that is being displayed is the optimization that you did as you built a page on the desktop version.
Gotcha. And then maybe diving into, I don't know if people are having so much of this problem now, but they definitely were a little while ago in terms of indexing problems. Now, I don't know if you've done any testing or maybe seen anything in the wild with what people are doing, but I guess what is there a common cause for indexing problems or a common fix?
Well, I think the common problem is when they switched over to mobile first indexing. That's
Okay.
when all the things, I think they really broke they broke it. They broke it, and it has not been fixed. And we're several years down the road now on that, and that is a frustrating issue for everyone involved. Um, some things you can do if you're having issues. You can look at the pages that Google's crawling the most on your site, your power pages, the ones that Google, like, I love this page and I'm in. You can link from that page to the page that is having trouble indexing, because the number one way that Google likes finding a page is through a click. Submitting to Search Console, I think, is near waste of time. But the way that Google likes to find a page is to go from one page to another page, and that can be on your site. That's totally fine. So you could put a link on one of your most crawled pages by Google to the page that you really want to show up but is having problems, and Google might get there. The other thing that I would recommend is having a page on your site that is a sitemap. So you have the XML sitemap that you would submit to Search Console. You can have an HTML sitemap, a page on your site that just contains all the links on your site. Do that, and then you can submit that site to Search Console. You can submit that site to Google's mobile friendly checker. You can submit that to this, that, and other things within Google, and Google will crawl it. And if Google's getting there, there's a good chance they're going to go from those pages, those links they see, deeper into your site. So I would have a page like that I can constantly submit to Google to get back through to get to those newer pages on my site that might be having problems.
Does that mean you'd have to constantly update that page every time you posted a new article?
There's usually a plugin or feature that can do that automatically.
Okay. Gotcha. I think I've asked most of my, I guess you could say, beginner questions and general SEO questions there. But are there any interesting SEO tests or things you found recently within your SEO research?
So Ahrefs just came out with a new search engine.
Oh yes,
Called
Yep.com.
Yep.com. And my concern was that they were just going to rank everything according to like Ahrefs, like domain authority or page authority,
Yeah.
or Ahrefs rank or something like that. Because one of the biggest things they said is that they're going to do a profit share with content creators. And what they said is that of the ad revenue that comes in, 90% is going to go out to content creators. So I was like, well, and they don't say how that's happening at all. But let's just assume for a second that there's money to be had. So then I was like, well, okay, can we now game their search engine where maybe I show up first and I get a huge chunk of this money pie? Because that would be great.
Yeah.
Like how can we do that? So I ran a test on their algorithm, and I did like random terms that are kind of like higher kind of money terms, but a mix of, say, like some sort of like affiliate terms that might be good, some sort of best terms that might be good, some local terms, and some how tos or the kind of stuff like that. And what's interesting is that they do not go according, like in order, according to any of their metrics, which was genuinely nice to see. But the next thing I did is that I did those same searches against Google and then
Mm.
compared the two. And what I found is that Yep is hitting about 30% of Google results.
Mm.
So of, like, say, the 10 and 10, about 3 are actually what you see in Google, but the others were not. And what they're claiming is that they are giving more relevant results. And that's an interesting thing because nobody is right now optimizing for Yep.
Yeah.
So there's a chance that these actually could be better results. But you have to figure some of the Google results are good, right? Like the reason that
Mm.
people use Google, why it has the market share that it does, is because the average person really likes Google.
Yeah.
The only people that really complain about Google results are SEOs.
Yeah.
Everyone else that actually uses
Because
Google is
you learn the person who wrote the best vacuum cleaner review when you're looking for a new vacuum cleaner is just some dude sitting at home who's never used one.
that's just us. But everyone else is like,
Yeah.
all right,
Yeah.
that's good. So you have to figure some of the results are good. That's why people use it, but obviously some of the results are not good. And so in my mind, there's a decent chance that Yep has figured something out that, while they have these results that are pretty good, they might be providing other results that are actually very quality. And then and as I mentioned before, they haven't explained how this is going to work, but there's a chance that content creators could actually get an ad revenue share, which might make it worth your time to create content that can rank well in the search engine, because Google is not sharing any of
Mm.
their trillions upon trillions of dollars that they make. So it's a very interesting thing. So that was a test that I ran just in the last month and a half on, are they going just straight by their own metrics? They're not. I'm sure their metrics do factor in, and they do. Are these completely divergent from Google? They're not. There is about a 30% match between them, so there is some
Mm.
overlap that you could maybe optimize for Google and also optimize for Yep at the same time, and then potentially there's some opportunity to get some sort of their ad revenue. However, that might play out, which I thought was pretty cool.
Do you know yet how to optimize for Yep, or is that a
Not yet,
secret?
but I feel like it's not a secret. I haven't done anything with it, but I feel like it'll be an easier nut to crack
Mm.
than Google. And so, like, if it turns out that there's money that we can get out of their ad service, like, that'd be great. And as SEOs, the thing that I love the most is that, let's say they can get any kind of market share, like any kind of market share at all, we only make more money. That
Mm.
is only a good thing. If somebody can take Google down a peg, that will
Yeah.
only make us more money, and that's just going to be fantastic. Because now we
Mm.
can be like, somebody like, oh, we need to optimize for Yep. Like, good for you. I have a Yep optimizing service, and then I can give you those pages that are going to perform well in Yep for whatever reason they want to be in Yep. So,
Yeah.
like, if we can get another search engine that can gain any significant market share at all, it's going to be really, really good for all of us. We're all going to do really, really well. So I'm a Yep apologist now. I'm all for this new
A big
search
shill.
engine.
A big shill.
Yeah.
Then you'll be saying Yep it instead of Google
It's like, Yep it right now. It's
it.
so good.
I've got one more question for you then. It
Okay.
goes on the same line before I let you go. Yeah. Bing, I guess Bing searching, optimizing for Bing versus optimizing for Google. Obviously, all the time the results are so different. Is there I guess some, if you wanted to say optimize for Bing, for maybe you're looking for typically older traffic, maybe often people that are less internet savvy. Is there a way to optimize for Bing over optimize for Google? Is there something different you can do on your page or website?
Well, you hit the nail on the head. The most people that use Bing did not change the settings on their computer, and that's why
Yeah.
they're using Bing. And the people that don't do that are primarily people that are a little bit older, and it also skews a little more female than male. So, like, if you have a particular product that might skew into that demographic, optimizing for Bing is a very good idea, because there's a decent chance that you're going to get a lot of traffic. One other thing to note is that a lot of the search engines that exist that aren't Bing are Bing. So, like, Yahoo is Bing, AOL is Bing, DuckDuckGo is Bing. So they are all built on the Bing universe of a search engine. So if you have people that might be using those search engines, whatever you've identified for your target audience, it's Bing traffic. They filter it a little bit, they modify a little bit depending on which one you're looking at, but they are all built on Bing. And so when Bing says we have whatever percentage of our market share, they're actually lumping all of those things together and saying that that's what we have. So there are very, very legitimate reasons to be focused on Bing, because your audience might be there, and as a complete marketer or complete SEO, that's something you should very, very seriously consider. But to rank, what I've found is that Bing, the sites in Google that do well, that are also matched well in Bing, have really strong on-page. It looks like, by and large, Bing does not really care about links that much, but they're really looking at the on-page that you've dialed in. So if you dial in your on-page for a competitive Google market, there's a good chance you're going to do very, very well in Bing.
Okay.
So that's how I would approach it. I would look at my on-page and make sure that my on-page is really dialed in. And then that page has a really good chance of doing very well within Bing. The other thing you want to do is you want to sign up for Bing Webmaster Tools. Sites that are in Bing Webmaster Tools get crawled more by Bing and then rank better. It is basically a ranking factor because their crawler is smaller. They don't have as much resources to get out, so they have to prioritize where the crawler is going to go. So if you are in Bing Webmaster Tools and you've submitted your site, you will get crawled by Bing and you will do better. Your pages will rank better.
Oh, that's awesome advice. That's awesome for anyone who's selling products or whatever they're doing on Bing. There you go. That's how you can optimize your page. And I guess one way to optimize your page is using something like your tool, like Page Optimizer Pro, and I guess that gives us a little promotion for niche website builders as well.
If they want, they would only do it if they want to rank better. If they don't want to rank better, they don't want to do it. That's basically how it goes.
So if you go in the description, there's this coupon code Niche Website Builders. I think it gets you 15% off, but I'll double check that for you guys anyway. And I'll mention this in the intro too, so you guys will know exactly where to find it and how much percentage you can get off. But thank you for coming on, Kyle, and giving us some of your knowledge and really helping even myself selfishly learn some of these concepts as well. So thank you.
Awesome. Thanks for having me. This was great. A lot of fun.
Perfect. Cheers.
Thanks for tuning in, and I hope you enjoyed the show. Don't forget to like and subscribe wherever you're listening. Until the next episode, goodbye.